Ow! Greetings, programs. This is DecKrash, better known as Brandon, and you're watching another Tron Uprising review. Alright, everybody, this is DecKrash, better known as Brandon, bringing you another review of Tron Uprising. Today we are going to move on along and get to the last episode that was aired before it went on the 3-month hiatus, Price of Power. Now, this is one that I really wanted to review, and, well, like I said before, life happened, and so I didn't get to it up until now. And I went back over it just to make sure I had all my facts straight. This was a really exciting episode. It was... Okay, I'm going to get ahead of myself if I say it like this. So let's go ahead and talk about what the plot was. So it starts off with Beck infiltrating some ship with a scientist who had built some powerful new weapon. Well, what it was some small disc-like thing that actually fits on the disc that all programs have. It increases like aggression and speed and reaction time, basically making them making anyone who wears it into a super soldier. So Beck in his Tron disguise fights off the soldiers, gets in the thing, tries to get the weapon, the device from the scientist, but he had orders from Tron to bring in the scientist as well because he was the only person who could replicate the technology. The scientist didn't want to go easy, so basically the scientist used the device on himself, ended up fighting Beck to the point where Beck had to kind of outmaneuver him. It was like outmaneuvering a hurricane. He was moving so fast. I mean, this thing is like Red Bull and cocaine for programs. It's like all his body started glowing this fierce red and just let loose a burst of energy before he just went ape, on Beck. Finally, Beck managed to get the upper hand and knocked the program's disc out of his hand with the device on the ground while the program was hanging from a ledge on the ship, which was still high in the air over the turbines. And he was trying to give him the other hand. The guy was like, "Give me the disc! I need it! I need it!" It was like he was some sort of junkie looking for his last fix, and he wouldn't give Beck his other hand. Slipped out of Beck's grip and fell down to the drive below, shattering to itty-bitty pieces. Of course, General Tesla, who was waiting for this disc, was furious. Ended up killing one of his own soldiers for it. I mean, I have to pause and say this show, in its portrayal of death, fortunately these programs are computer programs, they're not humans, so death for them isn't terribly gruesome. If you've seen Tron Legacy, then you know that they basically die. They turn into a shower of tiny little cubes. And so it's just that they show it so often in the show, it's like crazy. For kids, I guess. So, anyway, Tesla's furious, and they sort of do a little meanwhile thing with Beck's friends at the garage where they work, having trouble with these two jerky programs. Let me see, what's that? I am so okay. Cutler, who's like one of these, not Cutler, excuse me. That was the program who's the ISO war. Sorry. Anyway, it was two of these other programs who had challenged Zed to a race, and him and his friend are these two local jerks who end up joining, I guess, a group of loyalists to Tesla. It's almost sort of like how in Nazi-occupied Germany, Nazi Germany, they had the Hitler Youth, or you had people who were special civilians who were given special powers to report any goings-on to the local authorities. Basically, people were hired to tell on you. Yeah, that's how these two guys worked. So after having a bit of an incident with with Zed and Mara, they walk off saying, you're basically with that stupid cocky, you're gonna get it thing. Well, what happened is that Beck was on his way back, still in his Tron disguise, and General Tessler had laid a trap for him by staging some sort of traffic accident. But inside the containers that had overturned, there were a whole bunch of soldiers that were just sent to take out Beck. Beck had no choice but to use the device to activate it himself. He was actually taking it to Abel's garage to have it destroyed, because Tron had told him the only thing that can destroy it is a high-powered laser, which he happened to have at the garage. But Tron really was kind of wary about Beck taking it there, because he thought, well, you probably won't be able to resist the urge to use it, since he saw what that thing can do. Well, Beck, of course, being surrounded by these soldiers, it was either that or get his behind killed. So he put it on and basically turned into a one-man wrecking machine, taking out that entire little small army of troops, and even outclassing Paige in her chopper. And so he kept it on him because, like I said, the whole device was like this kind of a drug for programs. It ended up turning him into a real jerk to his friends. Yes, people, this episode was pretty much like, if any of you grew up in the 80s and they had that A Very Special episode of Name Your Sitcom, it was kind of like that. Basically, one part of the lesson to be learned for this episode is drugs are bad, okay? I'm seriously not joking. Now, despite the silly undertone of it, the story's execution is really cool. So what happens is, of course, Beck realizes, especially when he's about to basically de-res Tron and gets into a fight, because Tron's telling him, you gotta let it go. And he starts fighting Tron and realizes what he's doing, and he stops himself, and Tron says, look, I chose you because you are strong and you're capable. You don't need that device. So he goes back to the garage, and by this time, the two jerk programs end up telling Tessler about was it Tessler? No. They told Pavel about what was going on. Pavel decides to use the garage as a staging ground for hostages, just to lure Beck out into the open to get the device back. So Beck ends up going into the garage, sneaking around, trying to make sure to destroy the device before he goes and rescues his friends. But Pavel ends up finding him out and getting the disc out of the laser room before the laser destroys it, and he uses it on himself. He ends up getting into this huge fight with now Ultra Pavel, I guess. Yeah, a sniveling little weasel with super speed and super strength. I mean, that was just an interesting little device. I mean, if he didn't already have a big enough head, he's sitting there laughing maniacally, talking about he's got the power and going off on Beck. Beck, however, manages to outclass him in a fight simply because, well, he's Beck. Winning the day, and of course saving his friends and destroying the disc in the process. The laser actually slices it in half. Now the garage gets trashed, and so they have to rebuild the dang thing. Fortunately, this is a computer world, and rebuilding buildings doesn't really take very long. It's all like energy based, which is, I guess, pretty cool. So the device, which looks like a disc, is sliced in half, and Pavel's like, no! And of course, Tessler's furious that the disc was destroyed, and Pavel's like stalking off, I'm very sorry, sir. This won't happen again. He stalks off, just massively pissed, and then he goes into his quarters and sees the half of the device that he had managed to save. The device starts to regenerate, and the episode ends with his just laughing maniacally. So it ends very interestingly. And there is actually one thing I forgot to say, and I totally messed that up, because what happens is that when Beck puts on that device for the first time and beats the living snot out of all those soldiers and outclasses Paige, he actually heads straight to General Tessler to try to take him out. I was like, that was ridiculous but pretty cool. You have another fight between him and General Tessler, and Well, if you've seen the show, you see the whole arms thing that General Tesla uses, the little Stretch Armstrong arms. As absolutely ridiculous as that type of power is, it's done pretty effectively, because, I mean, you're fighting, you can't really win against him in hand-to-hand combat if he's sitting there with arms that stretch all over the place, just can get to you, doesn't matter how far away you are from him. And they move incredibly fast. So, you know, Tesla's not somebody to mess with, but he was turning Tesla into his, you know what, and Tesla was scared. The only reason why Beck stopped the fight was, in the end, the fight was taking out the base, and oh my god, the garage person, Abel was there bringing in this new tank that they were fixing. And so he had to rescue Abel and bring him back to the garage. That was one part. Seeing how badly Abel got messed up in the crossfire was one thing that kind of helped Beck to realize that, you know, this device is not exactly as good as he thought it was. So I'd completely forgotten to talk about that. So, once again, story-wise, this episode was pretty killer, even though it has a silly drugs are bad and K kind of message in the background. Very well executed. Keeps you interested in what's going to happen next, especially with, you know, Beck having the device. You knew he was not going to have it forever, and you just kind of... At least they didn't get rid of it permanently, so it's going to pop up at some later time. I hope. I have seen cases where something really interesting like this happens in a series, and they never go back to it again. Tron Uprising doesn't seem to be a series that is going to do that. So yeah, story-wise, despite the silliness of the premise in some respects, still well executed. Action-packed, kept you interested the whole time. Sort of an inane amount of character development. I mean, you did not need to stick that kind of heavy-handed message just to show that the main character is a person of moral character, so to speak. You know, it gave a little bit more build up in the character relationships. It shows how, of course, Zed has that constant crush on Mara, and Zed actually rescues Mara in that whole big battle against Abel, between Beck and Abel, and Beck ends up telling Mara, you know, Zed was the one who rescued you, kind of upping her affection for him, even though he shouldn't have known that, since seeing how, as far as his friends were concerned, he wasn't there. And so, like I said, story-wise, great execution. Animation was wonderful. You had a whole bunch of different areas that now it wasn't as visually stunning, of course, as that episode Identity. You know, that to me was the most visually stunning of the whole episode, but it still had great action sequences. And of course, that battle scene, both with General Tesla and against Pavel, both of those were intense. It had all kinds of cool stuff. There's one part where Beck is trying to, you know, stop Pavel, and he uses his disc to break the ground underneath him, and even Pavel's able to manage to get away from that. With General Tesla, it was just him he was just with against General Tesla. It was Beck jumping around in this gridding underneath the floor panels, and you see the hand things just going through all those different, all the gridding and stuff like that, trying to come after him. And of course, Beck's charged up with that device, and he's like, he's jumping, keeping several steps away from General Tesla. And like I said, General Tesla was trying everything to try to stop this guy, and he was scared, and that was just beautiful, I have to admit. So great action scenes, and you know, usual thing. The angles in which they show the characters' faces sometimes, especially Pavel. Nobody needs to see him up close. He's just butt ugly, and I know that's supposed to be the point. He has that sniveling little weasel face, this greasy, slick back hair, beady eyes, longish face. He looks like a hairless sewer rat in glowing red robes, and glowing red armor, and it's just no. And just showing him, and then knowing that it's Paul Rubens who does his voice. It's Pee Wee Herman, for those of you who don't know. It just makes him just even more ew, if you know what I mean. So, anyway, aside from all that, it's still it was great visually, good storyline, sound and everything like that, always wonderful. This episode, in my opinion, if it was not for, I'll say this: the only reason why I have to subtract points is because of that silly, inane, almost drugs are bad, okay, message. And trust me, that's the last time I'm going to do that. And so this one gives a solid 8, or maybe even an 8.5 out of 10. I really liked this episode. I was enjoying it just as much as watching it the second time as I did the first. So that's it for the Price of Power. When I come back, we're going to be getting into the new stuff. Finally, I'm just glad to get back and doing this. And for those of you who enjoy listening to it, I'm glad that you do enjoy it. As always, if you have any comments, any questions, leave it down below in the comment section. Keep it civil as always. And so I think that's about it for me. Until next time, people, this is DecKrash, better known as Brandon. Stay lucky and stay blessed.